Angela Holmes and Garrett, her husband, found themselves utterly surprised. They were handed a letter from the Housing Association demanding the removal of Angela's wheelchair ramp. Initially, they brushed it off as a misunderstanding. However, when the Housing Association escalated the matter by placing a line on their house, they realized they had to take a stand. Angela, Garrett, and their 3-year-old daughter Mary had been living in their home in St. Juliet for 10 years, and in that time, they never had any problems with their neighborhood or the Housing Association. So the letter they received from them on the 15th of December 2017 came as a complete shock to the family. In all 10 of those years, not a single complaint had been filed against the Holmes, and not a single concern had been raised about Angela's wheelchair ramp. Most of the people in the apartment block knew her well, and many people offered to help her even though they didn't need to. So what was this about? As Angela thought about all the questions she had, something came to her mind. A new HOA president had been appointed recently, and she made quite a few comments because of the ramp. Angela thought she might be the one who was behind the complaint. But at the end of the day, it didn't matter, as there was no way Angela was going to comply. Angela ignored the letters that came pouring in on a daily basis. But one day, there was something different about the letter. This wasn't a letter to ask her to remove the ramp. It was a threat stating she needed to come to explain her actions or face the consequences. Angela was stunned, but knew she was in the right. So Angela made her way to the Housing Association office. Once there, she asked them to explain why they wanted her to remove her ramp. The board members seemed uncomfortable with the question, but when the president said it was unsightly, Angela knew exactly where she stood. She refused to remove the ramp and left. The next day, the Housing Association informed Angela that a line had been placed on her house because of her refusal. They said that the line would only be removed once the ramp was gone. At this point, Angela was boiling with rage, but what could she do? She couldn't just ignore the line that had been placed on her house. With a heavy heart, Angela asked Garrett if he could bring the ramp into the house. He refused at first, stating that they didn't have to comply with such a ridiculous request. But once Angela informed him of the line, his tone changed. They had effectively been blackmailed into accepting the request, and it would only get worse if they didn't comply. Even though Angela worked from home and she had gotten used to the environment, she was starting to feel trapped. In the past, she could go out if she wanted to. But now, she had to wait for someone to come home before she could go anywhere. It was torture, and she desperately wanted it to come to an end. Needing to break away for a little while, Angela went to go visit her next-door neighbor. She had known June since they moved in, and she knew that a chat with the older woman would break the tension. But June had something to say about Angela's situation with the Housing Association, and it would change everything. June informed Angela that the association had no foot to stand on. There was no way they could get through with their request, especially not if Angela decided to take them to court. That sparked something inside Angela, and she immediately called a lawyer to find out if there was any truth to June's statement. The lawyer told Angela that her neighbor was right. There was no way the Housing Association could force her to remove her ramp. Now that Angela had all the information she needed, she took the Housing Association to court, and the judge wasn't happy with the situation at all. But before she made her verdict, she decided to teach the association a little lesson. So what had actually happened in this case? Well, as many people out there know, big corporations or agencies, such as malls, or, in this case, a housing association, need to ensure their premises are accessible to disabled people. That's why they have ramps and disabled parking. If they didn't, they would be violating certain acts. One of the most important acts that the Housing Association violated was the Americans with Disabilities Act. This act prohibits the discrimination of people with disabilities in everyday activities. And the Housing Association did discriminate against Angela by forcing her to remove her ramp. But what would happen to them? Would they get a slap on the wrist, or would they get a harsher punishment? The judge not only ordered the association to revoke the line they placed on Angela's property, She also ordered them to compensate her for all the suffering they had put her through. And Angela would use that compensation to pull the ultimate act of revenge. She used it to buy the new president's state-of-the-art apartment. To safeguard the privacy of individuals portrayed, certain names, locales, and identifiable traits have been altered and are fictional creations of the author. Any similarities to real events, locations, or individuals, whether living or deceased, are purely coincidental.